You are now listening to Vigilantes Radio, presented by the Only One Media Group. This is the people's choice for quality interviews, celebrities, and special guests. Hosted by Demetrius-Reynolds. Call in to join the mix at 701-801-9813. For the complete archive of episodes, visit onlyonemediagroup.com and be sure to like us on Facebook at Vigilantes Radio. We welcome all. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Demetrius-Reynolds. Enjoy the show.
Hello. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another cool episode of Vigilantes Radio Live right here on iHeartRadio. And I am your host, Deanie. We have a very special guest for you guys, so you definitely want to stick around for that. And as a matter of fact, text your buddies, family members, or even share it on social media right now and let them know that we are about to dive deep into another interview. Before I bring my guest on, I do want to say that, confidence. You are a unique and valuable person, no matter what, No error in judgment, no embarrassment, no pain, no setback can take away the inherent value of who you are and who you can be. Certainly you want to be the best you can be, and a way to do that is by being confident of who you are. If you let every little thing and even every big thing get to you, your confidence can quickly be eroded. The more you worry, the more reason you'll have to worry. There's no reason to get caught in such a downward spiral. Instead, always keep in mind that no circumstance, no setback, no turn of events can ever have the power on its own to change your value as a person. Every life will have its share of unfortunate situations, but that is certainly no reason to cower in fear or to become consumed with anxiety. I know this world makes it so easy to be full of anxiety, but rather you have every reason to move confidently forward. Whatever life may take from you will never be able to deplete the good and valuable things you have to give. Take that from me, Coach Deanie. That is my word. Are you ready?
You're live in the mix. Let's get this started.
All right, again, welcome to the show. You're listening to VRL, that's Vigilantes Radio Live, right here on iHeartRadio, and I am your host, Deanie. I do have to say that this particular episode is pre-recorded, and I can't wait to deliver it to your inboxes, and for you guys who subscribe to the show, you'll be the first to know, and I always appreciate that. So thank you. Our interviews are designed to go beyond the music, news, books, art, acting, films, technology, education, entrepreneurship, entertainment, and sometimes even past that thing that we call the ego. Our interviews are designed to go behind the scenes and into the minds of these incredible human beings. The ones who are out there giving it their all for me, for you, and for the world. Well, again, I want to welcome you to Vigilantes Radio, where we bring you the most fascinating guests and insightful conversations. And today we have the honor of hosting James W. Jim Bill Keenan, a retired attorney at law who has embraced his artistic side as an Irish poet. From the hills of wild, wonderful West Virginia, Jim Bill has completed his fourth collection of poetry. It's called Poetry Near a Lawyer, Collection 4 of Poetic and Artful Expressions. So get ready for an explosive and inspiring conversation with the incredible James W. Keenan. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Dean. Jim Bill Keenan here.
How are you, Mr. Jim Bill?
I am well. May I tell you, before we start interviewing me, that I was favorably impressed by your opening comments. I think that you and I, to coin a phrase, are disciples of the same faith.
Yes.
People encounter tribulation in life. Tribulation comes to the blessed and non-blessed, and all of them must meet it head on and throw to it, whatever challenge it may be, the very depths of their soul.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. So, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Could you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're currently focused on in your poetic endeavors?
Once again, I'm Jim Bill Keenan. A little bit about me. I'm a product of the Irish Christian Judeo-ethnic culture in the mountain state of West Virginia. I practiced law for 45 years, semi-retired a year ago. I'm now endeavoring and enjoyably participating in my avocation, which is poetry.
Nice. And we're going to make sure that we dive into some of your works within the book, if you'd like to share some of those. I do have a few questions leading up to that. Reflecting on your journey from law to poetry, what was the biggest moment of self-awareness you've experienced, and how did it shape your path going forward?
Years ago, I had participated as a defense counsel in a jury trial and prevailed. I won it. And afterward, I was seated here in my residence office, discussing things with a lady friend of mine and with a client. And my lady friend said, "Jim Bill, you have, as you wanted to, achieved your renowned position as a trial court attorney. You're now an icon, and you're famous, and you should be proud." And I sat there for a minute, and we were having a libation. And I said, that may be true, but I want to be remembered as something other than just a renowned trial court attorney. I want to do something. I want to do something culturally that will provide to me the fulfillment that I'm missing in life. And that night, I took upon myself the task of writing some poetry. And it immediately took to me. And it's been a number of years now, and I've published 4 books entitled Poetry by a Lawyer, Poetry from a Lawyer, Poetry with a Lawyer, and Poetry near a lawyer. I just completed my 5th book, which will be published soon, and it's entitled Poetry Alongside a Lawyer. My publisher chuckled, and he said, "Jim Bill," he said, "I think you got all the propositions covered there." And I laughed with him. And he said, we're so pleased that you let us be your publisher. He said, "But now after this 5th one that you're working on, which I just completed last week," he said, we would kind of like to point you in a different direction." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "We want you to write your memoirs." He said, "You got a 45-year law practice. You've been a trial court attorney. You've defended murderers or alleged murderers, alleged rapists, alleged robbers." He said, "You've done it all." And he said, "Now you've got these books of poetry that you've diligently worked on and produced and authored. He said, he said, people don't buy poetry books like they used to. He said, and if they buy them, more often than not, they buy an e-book. And as from the e-books, your royalty is so paltry that we're pleased you're with us, but we're almost embarrassed that somebody of your obvious talent as a poet is not reaping more. And he said, if you write your memoirs, he said, I'm sure that we could sell that book, that it would be enjoyed by your, he said, you've got a following now. Incidentally, my books are being sold in Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Canada, of course, the United States, all over. So I'm selling books. But he said, we want to sell a lot of books. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I didn't get into it for money, but if there's money to be made on my work, it's mine, and I want it. He said, I promise you, if you'll write your memoirs, things will turn for the better for you. And I said, all right, you got it. So I'm going to send in my 5th book, Poetry Alongside a Lawyer, next week for publishing. It'll be out in about 4 weeks. And in the meantime, while I'm waiting on it, I'm going to start working on my memoirs. And I'm 72 years old, just had my 72nd birthday on the 18th of this month.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I've seen a lot of things come and go, as you might imagine, as a trial court attorney. And I've had some fulfillment, cultural and self-fulfillment, having been reaped from my authorship of my books of poetry. So I've got people say, we like to listen to your tales. And one of my loyal clients said, hell, Jim Bill, you're a raconteur. He said, you can tell more stories at a party than a cocktail party in Paris, France. I laughed, and I said, well, I might be able to tell a few. And he said, well, you sure can. So that's where I'm pointing. And I've lived a very rewarding life. I was raised in a Christian Judeo ethic and by an Irish couple. I'm 100% Irish, so I'm billed as the Irish poet. So I've had some tribulations. I've had some illnesses. I've had 4 heart attacks, 3 life-threatening infections, and 2 what should have been fatal automobile accidents. But yet here I am, with the good Lord's blessing, talking to a fantastic interviewer, and I salute you, and you do me honor by letting me be your guest. So that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit of how I started into poetry. I'm open for questions. I know you probably have many for your listeners. So let's get at it, and let's have a good time, sir.
All right. Before we begin, do you know where to start with your memoir? I'm sure you have countless stories to tell.
Somebody else asked me that the other day, and I said, well, I think I'll start my memoirs touching upon some things in my childhood. I was a cripple when I was a child. I had Perthes disease, which is a deterioration of the hip joint. And I struggled through that, recovered to the point that I played high school and college football as a quarterback. I enlisted in the Marine Corps and made it through Marine Corps screening and analysis and physical regimens. I had a rewarding time in the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, The only time, sir, I've ever lived outside Fayette County, West Virginia, where I live now. The only time I've ever lived outside Fayette County in my 72 years was my term in the United States Marine Corps. Other than that, I've lived in the same county. I've been close to my parents, close to my family, my 3 sons. I've been divorced for more than several years. I reside alone, but I'm a happy man. And you know yourself from your business that, forgive me, happiness comes from us, to us. Happiness comes from within our own selves. I'm a happy man. I've fulfilled myself culturally with my poetry. I've accomplished 45 years of the practice of law. I've lived through some tribulations and challenges, but I've had many, many, many rewarding experiences. So here I sit, and once again, you've done me honor by inviting me onto your show. I've been on a couple of radio shows. Kate Delaney, an Emmy Award-winning radio show host, had me be a guest on her show. And Logan Crawford, I've appeared on his television show twice. Nice. We'll probably go back a third time now that I'm getting my 5th book accomplished. I can relate, if you wish, some specifics about some of my poetry, some of the poems themselves. I forewarn you that I do not ever explain my art. You know, when my first book came out, a famous artist called me on the telephone, a famous poet, and he said, is this Jim Bill Keenan, the lawyer poet? And I said, yes, sir, this is he. And he said, this is so-and-so. I'm not going to tell you who he was. But he was a nationally known poet. And he said, Jim Bill, I'd like to share a couple things if I'm not being intrusive. I said, no, sir, you do me honor by calling me. He said, first of all, I want you to understand that you are now an artiste. And as such, you produce your art. He said, now, some people will not like your art. That's natural. He said, you know, not everybody liked Michelangelo. Not everybody liked Hemingway. Not everyone liked Tolstoy. Not everybody. He said, hell, not everybody liked Elvis Presley. And I said, yes, sir, I understand that. And he said, when you receive criticism, what I urge you to do is be the proverbial turtle. Let criticism roll off your back. He said, do not ever lash back at someone who criticizes you because you're an artiste. He said, when you get accolades, he said, don't flap your wings. Don't be arrogant. Just accept the compliments, any accolade you get, with humility and carry on. And he said, if you'll do those things, you will find that being an artiste is something that you produce your art, and as a poet, they read your art. And he said, never explain your art. He said, you've created your art, and it's for the reader to interpret your art, whether they like it or do not like it. And he said, if you explain your art, it's taking something from your soul. He said, people may or may not recognize what it is you're getting at by your art. He said, but don't you see, that's the way all artists are, whether they dance ballet, whether they sing good songs, whether they play a good guitar, whether they write poetry, whether they ski down a hill fast. He said, everyone who's an artiste creates their art, and the observers, either listeners or readers or viewers, they view your art and interpret your art. He said, that's called art. And I said, well, I'll remember that. And I have. To this day, I've written over 400 poems, and I've never explained one of them. They're all, and there's no unified theme in my art, my poetry. Each and every poet is its own creation, is its own story. So I and all my poems I post first before publishing. I post them on my Facebook page to see what the reaction is. And all of my poems I've ever posted, and there's been hundreds, I don't think I've received a single serious criticism. Now, some people have not agreed with some of it and said so, but I've never had anyone get after me, get on me, jump with both feet, anything like that. I'm proud to say that. I've got a poem that I like to refer to. It's called "Women Know," and it touches upon the fact that women know and that men do not know. And that was in my first book. It's on page 28 of my first book. And since the years ago that I wrote that poem, you wouldn't believe the number of women who have stopped by my law office, indeed, or upon happenstance encountering at a social event, or even just a political event. I've had women walk up to me and say, "Jim Bill, I'm one of the ones that know." And it's always a laugh. It's always appreciated by me. I just, this evening, participation with you is just one of the rich, cultural, enjoyable, and satisfying encounters and events that I'm experiencing in my life. And again, I won't beat it one more time, but you do me honor by bringing me on, and I'm so flattered to be with you.
Sir, I'm happy that you're here. Your poetry provides you with gratification and fulfillment. Can you share a particular poem or piece that holds a special meaning to you, and why?
And I've told this account before. You know, one time they asked Lionel Richie, said, "Lionel, of all your songs you've written, what is your favorite?" And his response was, "They're all my babies. They're all my favorite." That's kind of the way I feel.
Yes.
But I've got some that I like to, from time to time, recite for people who want me to. Let me see. I'm looking at my fourth book, Poetry and Error Lawyer, and I'm going down to contents. Let me see if I can find one that might be appropriate. Let me see if you can interpret a message from one of these.
Okay.
Here's one entitled "Explain." Explain by Jim Bill Keenan. Tell me why I must always explain. I've struggled for so long without my own sweet Lorraine. The days are so short now and will come not again. 'Twon't be so long before I board my own train. The journey is old now, yet short time to gain, and adieu will be sweet with no right to complain. So tell me now why I can't just be and remain. Gonna go right on with no boast nor refrain. So tell me why now I must ever explain. How's that?
It's good. Is that about time and life?
Indeed, it's about my waning years. Here's something from my third book. My third book was dedicated to my sister, Carolyn Keenan Burton. Here's one that's entitled "My Boo." My boo, sweet as Tupelo honey, an angel of the first degree, Van said. A national natural resource can turn lead into gold, can fry it up in the pan, can make a shy man do what needs to be done, knows how to say hello in my bed. Lucky fella here, got it going on. Need no more help being happy. Need only my boo. Yeah, love to bring her that gallon of milk and loaf of bread.
Nice.
And I've got one. This one's kind of special. I attended the meeting of the West Virginia Bar Association, and at it, the guest speaker was the chief judge of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, federal court, and he talked about the human brain, and that struck me immediately. And I came home that very night, and I was just reflecting on his talking about the human brain, and I created a poem, and it's entitled The Human Brain. So I'm going to do it, and then I'll take questions. The Human Brain by Jim Bill Keenan. Nothing matches the human brain. It toils, it labors, it strives and will desperately strain. It ponders, it figures to solve and prevail once and for all, again and again. It frets and worries and seeks to be safe and secure the same to gain. It yearns for better than is there to go and there remain. Oh my goodness, please forgive me, but the power just went off in my home. We've had some problems with storms and whatnot. If the power comes back on, I will finish reciting that poem for you, but it's about the human brain, and I'm really proud of that one.
Yeah.
Are you still there? You're on my phone, so I think I've still got you.
Yes, sir. Still here. Still listening.
In answer to the question, do I have any favorites? You know, I'm kind of like Lionel Richie. They're all my babies. They're all my favorites. But some I reflect on more than others, indeed.
Right. There's a personal touch to them that I can tell, you know.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. So you've had a very long career as an attorney. Do you find any parallels between your time in law and poetry?
I do. You know, I have two books at my reach when I'm writing poetry. One's a dictionary and the other's a thesaurus. Because if I create a poem, I want to understand what I'm creating. So I have a dictionary. And I also have a thesaurus because when I create poems, I want to understand the words that I'm using. Attorneys, good trial court attorneys who are litigators, have to achieve what I call a command of the English language. A command of the English language facilitates an attorney to address courts, to inquire of witnesses, to address opposing counsel, to fashion and deliver opening statements and closing arguments. That command of the English language is a sine qua non. It's essential, in my opinion, to being a good trial court attorney. It's also, in my opinion, essential to being an artiste, a poet, because poetry is basically lyrics without music yet. Lyrics without music yet. I like for my poetry to have a cadence, a kind of a cadence of delivery of all of them. But a command of the English language, if you don't know what you're saying, you shouldn't be saying it. In both law and in poetry. I many times have worked diligently throughout a day or a week in my practice of law, and then come home and I'll take words that I utilized before a jury or to a court, and I'll incorporate them inferentially, indirectly, into some of the poetry I write. So there's a common connection between the two. Some people cannot fathom that, but it's got to be understood that when you're an artiste and creating art, you intend for your words to have a message, and that message can be inspired by so very many things, sir. I had an old friend, high school friend, contact me, and she related that she wanted to become a lawyer and a poet like me. And she said, but I need to know where you get your inspiration. And I did a letter to her, and I explained that, I get inspiration from everywhere. I get inspiration from Van Morrison's music, from Bruce Springsteen's music. I get inspiration from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, from John F. Kennedy's inauguration speech of where ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I get inspiration from, believe it or not, the drive-through clerks at my bank. They smile and they say things to me. I'll get an inspiration, sir, and it will hit me. And I write my poetry between 12:01 a.m. and 5 a.m. That's when I write. And all my books have the date, time, and place. I've written every single poem I've ever authored. But I get my inspiration from the view of the mountains and hills of West Virginia, from chatting with old friends or professional peers and contemporaries. I get inspiration from everywhere, and I tried to impress on her that part of my task as I do it is that I carry a small notebook in my pocket, and it's just astounding. I can go into one of my favorite beer gardens or restaurants and just take a couple of words that are uttered to me in jest, and I can come home and incorporate that into a poem. And sometimes I get inspiration and I can write a poem in 5 minutes, the whole thing. Wow. Other times I get inspiration and I spend hours and hours creating the draft, putting the draft down, picking it back up in a couple of days, refining it, changing some of the language. The point I'm making is that, and I made to her, is inspiration comes from everywhere, everywhere. And you got to be astute. You got to discern your words of inspiration and use them to your benefit. And that's what I've tried to do. And as I'm getting ready to publish my 5th book, I think I've done a pretty good job of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One other thing I wanted to ask, you have a phrase, or rather your poetry collection aimed to help readers live it well. What does this phrase mean to you personally?
That's my bywords. There's a famous comedian that uses the words, you just might be a redneck. There's another famous comedian that goes with him, and he says, get her done. Mm-hmm. And there's another one that goes with him that says, here's your sign. And to have watchwords in life is kind of a thing that I considered. And I thought, from my Christian Judeo ethic, what is it I want to convey? What do I want my message to be to people, to take from my art that I've created? And I came up with the phrase, live it well. And what I'm saying by that is I'm telling people to enjoy their life, to have fulfillment in life, to indeed live it well in all aspects. And if they come upon tribulations, look at them head on. Do it so at some point they can think, well, Jim Bill, I think I have lived it well. So that's basically my catchphrase or watchwords that I use. And I use it all the time. Every book I autograph, I write those words as part of the autograph, the words. And I'll tell people just on the street. I tell people in my law practice, call me if you need me. You've got my number. Call me if you need me. And I'll tell people just on the street or in all kinds of conversations, I hope you live it well. Mm-hmm. So I'm known for that here in West Virginia, here among the lawyers in West Virginia, among my mountain culture. And people will say, Jim Bill, I lived it well the other day, and they'll relate something to me. So it's been a rewarding catchphrase, and I'm proud to have adopted, and it's part of my cultural fulfillment.
Yes. I love that. All right. With 4 collections published, a 5th on the way, and a memoir to follow shortly behind it, what have you learned about yourself as a person on this creative journey?
I've learned that I, just as all human beings, have my frailties, have my weaknesses. You know, you're supposed to try to do best in life. It just ain't that tough being decent to people. It just ain't that tough trying to have some empathy for your fellow man. Everyone encounters the tribulations. I have had professional tribulations. I've had personal tribulations. I've had tribulations with significant, intimate others. But being 72 years of age, I've evolved to some of the rich sayings in life are like, number one, turn the page, meaning go on. Number 2, don't carry grudges. Let things go. Do your best. And when there's a challenge, accept nothing from yourself but your own best in addressing things. Life in general is not that tough, and we all encounter our tribulations, and what I believe God intended was that we live it well indeed, that we have empathy for our fellow man, we have compassion, we have a determination to be our best person. And there were times in my life with my legal career that I was imbued with arrogance, thinking, now I'm at the top of the heap, and rather than treat people, particularly opposing lawyers, with kindness, with professional regard, I at a time in those days was a bit more brash than I needed to be. And looking back on it, there were times that I didn't quite rate my arrogance. I just didn't quite rate it. And now I live life with great humility. I'm very humble. I don't have what we call friends in the nature of a true friend is not a common thing. A true friend is mutual. A true friend is someone that you value in life. A true friend is someone that you owe your loyalty and that you receive loyalty and effort. Opposed to acquaintances, we have so very many acquaintances, sir. It's part of the culture to have acquaintances who refer to each other as friends, but they're not. They're just an acquaintance out of facility, and they call each other friends, but they're not. They don't treat each other with true friendship. But to be a hail fellow well met is great. But being a hail fellow well met does not mean that everyone you meet you take into your confidence and you owe your loyalty to. So I value my friendships, and they are very few. Very few. And I think that's appropriate.
Absolutely. All right. Before we end the segment, is there any advice that you would like to give, or any words to live by, encouragement for our people out there, especially in the U.S. of A. in this time that we are in, with a lot of division, a lot of opinions and such, especially with this election coming up this year. So if you have anything for our listeners, I would greatly appreciate it.
I as an artiste, try to keep my political opinions to myself. Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm an artiste about. Our country is in trouble, sir. Our country is in trouble. We have a duty, and that's to go to that poll and cast our ballot. And I urge everyone, whether Democrat, whether Republican, whether independent, hell, whether Nazi communist, whatever you are, whatever your opinion is, whatever your philosophy is, whatever your loyalty is, go and participate in our government. Participate in our freedom. And when we participate in our freedom, we're enjoying the blessings of liberty that our forefathers tried to secure for us and did secure for us. And with liberty comes duty. And I believe part of our duty is to participate in our government in every single way. You know, the Bill of Rights has no vacation. The Bill of Rights has no days off. The Bill of Rights has no sick days. Our Bill of Rights have to be jealously protected. Jealously protected. And our Bill of Rights is secured by our participation in our government. So that's the message I would like to leave everyone, all your listeners, and urge them to live it well.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners connect with you on the internet?
Well, I've got a web page for my poetry. My books are sold through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Ex Libris. My telephone number and mailing address are matters of public record. I'm not hard to get a hold of. Since I semi-retired, the people, Logan Crawford said, "How's things going?" And I said, "Well, you know, I find that retirement gives you time to take your time. And I find that retirement, I'm Irish, And I sleep a little later than I used to. I enjoy my meals a little better than I used to. And I enjoy a highball of Irish whiskey, Jameson, some evenings as a nightcap when I want to. So I'm living it well. And I hope in some way, some small way or some big way, some way great or small, that this interview and this encounter will indeed help people to live it a little better than they have, and indeed achieve the goal of living it well.
Absolutely. All right, listeners. I will have Jim Bill's link in the description of this episode, so all you guys have to do is just click the link and connect with him. Thank you so much, Jim Bill, for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on my show. So thank you so much, and we wish you much success. Yes, sir.
Sir, you do me honor. Thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I just wish that we were there so we could shake hands and wish each other well. And to all your listeners, God bless and live it well.
Absolutely. God bless you. Thank you, and have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, my Vigilantes family, as always, for checking out my podcast over here at Vigilantes Radio Live. All episodes are available for free download, and you can grab it from either Spreaker.com/Only One Media Group, Spotify, Castbox, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, the app Podcast Addict, or over at our website, which again is onlyonemediagroup.com, and that goes for every single show that we've ever aired. If you like to request some music or send something for me to play, email it to vradio@onlyonemediagroup.com. That is V as in Victor. And here's my disclaimer: we are genre free, we do not judge, and we absolutely do not base our opinions on hearsay but facts alone. And actually, scratch all of that, because all of my opinions are always right. That's the bottom line. This is my show, so deal with it. Just kidding. On behalf of myself, Denny, I appreciate all you guys for tuning in, either afterwards or live with us. Spread the word, because sharing is caring. We stepped up our game just for you guys and our guests to make sure that you have the best experience here on our show. Be sure to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat, TikTok, at all social media sites, as well as Spreaker, YouTube. We always follow back. Okay, well, just remember to put yourself into everything that you do and never stop investing in yourself. Peace, love, grilled cheese, and talk with you later.
You are now listening to Vigilantes Radio, the people's choice for quality interviews, art, music, and hot topics. Hosted by Demetrius Houdini Black-Reynolds of the duo No Longer the Hero. All episodes of this podcast are available for free download at www.onlyonemediagroup.com. This is a Seventh Sign Regime Rebirth Worldwide Syndicate exclusive.